Hi, I'm Judy Mudd, and this art tip today is about watercolor brushes part 3. The brushes I'm going to show you today are not typically used for watercolor, but for oil or acrylic painting. But I find them very helpful, and I thought you might like to see them too and see how I use them. Here they are. I've got a synthetic bristle fan brush. It's very inexpensive. The main thing is here that these come soft, very soft, but you want one that has a little spring to it, so you want it to be firm. But it's just a very inexpensive little fan brush. This one is a long rigger. Now you can see how long this is. Usually our watercolor brushes are cut off about here. Also, when you think of a rigger, you think of something quite small, like maybe this long, and maybe like a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 even. But this one is actually a number 10 rigger. It is quite long. The bristles are quite long, and it is nylon. This one is made by Neef, N-E-E-F, Neef brushes. If you're not familiar with them, I find them. Actually, I bought this one online through an Australian store, so you might check that area for it. But it's Supreme Taklon, number 10 rigger, and it's very long. It has it can hold lots of paint, and because it's long-handled, you can be far away from your painting. You have very loose strokes versus the real tight ones that we sometimes get when we get close to our paintings. So let me show you how these two work. Okay, so I've mixed. This is cold pressed paper, by the way. I use Arch paper. I've mixed up some cobalt blue for a sky. I'm just going to lay it in very quickly. I could have actually wet this down first just a little bit so the paint would spread and stay wet longer. You might try that next time if you do it. Alright, just putting some color in with a round, this is a 12 or 14 brush. Just getting the sky in. Wet it again, make sure it's good and wet. And the color's nice and strong. Okay, so I have my sky in. I'm mixing up a little bit of a gray. To mix my gray, I'm using ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, just to make it a little gray. And while this is damp, I'm going to drag and actually squiggle. I'm only going to use maybe three brush little bristles here. So I'm going to squiggle it in there and get bigger to change the shape of my cloud shapes. And it goes in very softly. Put a little more down here. Maybe some distant clouds. And I'm also going to add a little darkening. I'll put a little ultramarine blue in that dark, put a little darkening down here. In this cloud. What's nice is that it's a very irregular shape. It's not like it's cut out because you're trying to draw a cloud. It just goes in very spontaneous looking. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water with the same brush to the top edge. This looks like the light's hitting this cloud. It's light and fluffy on top. I can add some darkening at the bottom a little bit more if you think it needs it. Mix up a little darker gray. Put some of these distant clouds in, those smaller distant clouds. And then I'm going to add a little of this yellow ochre into the lighter areas. Just a little bit, not everywhere, just a little bit, just so it looks like the sun may be hitting those on top. But I think it makes a really nice looking cloud. I'm just adding clear water up here now. Just clear water. but doesn't have that cutout look. And that's one thing that we get quite a bit sometimes when we really try to draw a clouds and they all have this perfect little shape. Well, this keeps you from doing that, and that's why I love this. All right, the other brush I'll lay in it the same way I did this one. It's very similar in use, so either one of these works like this. Again, this is cobalt blue. Just putting in it relatively strong because I know it's going to dry lighter at the end. But I want to get it on here pretty quickly because you got to get in there before it dries. Okay, something like that will do it. And now I'm picking up this, the long number 10 rigger. I'm just going to put water in this one and let you see. Again, because it's so long, and because we have these nice long handles and the bristles are long, you can be very spontaneous with it. Not something you can do with a little tight brush. Again, those clouds can be very soft and atmospheric. If you want to, you can add a little of the darkening at the bottom. Don't have to, but if you want to. Again, you can add, of course I could put a little more water up here where the light's hitting it. And you can put little teensy weensy clouds in the back. Little touches of those. And again, yellow ochre if you want to do that. So they work very similarly, both brushes. They both give you the opportunity to be loose and not tight. Now again, they also work in other ways. I'll go back to this fan brush, the bristle. Again, the three hair rule that I tell my students, just the 3 hairs. And again, you can do grasses because it's nice and stiff. You can do some really nice grasses. Change the color just a little bit. Add some other colors in there. Again, you just don't want to go overboard with this. You put too much in, but up close in a landscape, you might want a few of these up here. You can also do nice weeds. Again, try to make them go in different directions. You don't want everything to be the same. You can add a few little dots of foliage or seedlings or whatever, not seedlings, but seeds at the end of some weeds, something like that. This is also good for splatter, much finer splatter. See how fine that is? And that's because all of these are so small and stiff, and they don't grab onto a lot of paint. I'll use this. I'll show you what the difference in using this big thick rigger. This is a huge rigger in terms of painting. So I mean, this might be more, instead of course you don't want it too wet. And here's the grasses it would produce. Much thicker. This is much finer looking. Again, you might want to change up the color some. You can put the little dots, but that's more spontaneous looking, I think. I think this bigger rigger is actually would be great for tree trunks. This is the wrong color. Let me just try putting some burnt sienna with a little ultramarine blue. This might be better as a spontaneous looking tree instead. But having it, I'm going to try to get back here a little further without knocking off the camera. Again, holding it way in the back, like I'm doing here, makes your strokes a little more spontaneous looking, so that's always helpful. Again, this one also does the splatter, but you see how tiny those were. This is much larger, but very effective. Now, I don't know if you saw the corral scene of the horses that I just had. I used this in the dirt areas where the horse's hooves have dug in their the shape of the hoof, and I'll just take these and kind of scratch those colors through it, so it looks like there's some texture in the dirt. But the main thing is the cloud shapes and how beautiful those can be using these brushes that are typically used in an acrylic or a oil painting method. Anyway, they're quite fun. Have fun painting.